Welcome, everybody, to Black and Gold Weekly, a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube, brought to you in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. I am your host, John, and we are talking Boston Bruins hockey today. It is episode 48. Crazy that we've had so many episodes already, getting close to the big 50, which will definitely be awesome to reach that milestone. But as you can see, we got a special guest on once again. It is Danny Jaillet making his return to the show. Reoccurring guest, Danny, it is awesome to have you on as always. And we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. It's kind of a break in the action with the Bruins. They obviously missed their last few games before Christmas because of COVID issues. Now they still haven't returned. Their game in Ottawa that was supposed to be Wednesday night got postponed, and they're not playing again until New Year's Day. Hopefully that game actually does happen. But we're kind of at a break in the season here. It's kind of a good point to just kind of check up and see where the team's at right now. But appreciate you coming on and talking some Bruins hockey today.
I don't know how many more times I'm going to be on here before I'm considered a not special guest and you want to kick me off of this, but I'm very glad to be here, and it's always great to talk hockey with you.
No, I want to know how many more times you come on before you just become the co-host.
I don't know. When I see that paycheck come in the mail, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll have to slip you some money there for weekly appearances. But
I'll talk to my agent.
Yeah, definitely. But we've got a lot to get into here today. It's going to be a fun episode. I think our main thing is we're going to go through the roster and we're going to give player grades to all of the players who have played at least 10 games this year. I feel like if you've played less than 10 games, then you probably haven't seen enough of you to give an accurate grade. But for the players that have played 10 plus games, I want to give kind of like a grade to their point this year in the season, A through F, where you think they're at. And then after that, we're going to talk about some things or something that we've liked about the team this year, a positive, something that I think is a good sign moving forward. And then on the other hand, something that needs to get better, hasn't been good enough, needs to improve if the Bruins are going to be the team that we want them to be this year. And I think this is going to be a pretty fun episode, especially given the fact that, they haven't played in a while, but we're going to have a fun time here talking about this team at this kind of checkpoint of the season. Before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show is in partnership with them and would not be happening without them. So thank you to everybody at B&G for all the support. Also, want to point out the links down in the description of the video. As always, if you are in the market for Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any team, or NCAA college apparel, it is all there using those 3 links. You can check out a great variety of products and spend some of that holiday money you picked up over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully, you'll if you're in the market for anything like that, that would be a great place to check it out, and you can add to your collection of Bruins, NHL, or college-related apparel. But Danny, think it's time to get into it here, and we'll get right into it here with the player grades. I got the roster pulled up here in front of me, and we'll just kind of go through. And we'll just kind of go player by player and talk about their year so far. So I have the stats page up listed by point. So I guess we're gonna start with the good. It seems like, and Brad Marchand is the first on the list. 27 points in 21 games played, 11 goals, 16 assists, +3. If you had to grade Brad Marchand so far this season, what do you got?
I mean, at this juncture in his career, you would expect maybe some slowing down, but it doesn't look like he's slowing down at all. It's like Tom Brady, as he gets older, he seems to get better, but without Brad Marchand, we talk about the Bruins' inconsistencies. I'm not sure where they'd be if he wasn't putting up these numbers. I think he is one of the few that are helping keep this team sort of afloat, even though they haven't been playing that well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also giving Brad Marchand an A, absolutely. He's been their best player this year. This team without Brad Marchand is Probably down with like Ottawa in the standings.
Mm.
Like they're probably like 7th-ish place without Brad Marchand. Nowhere near a playoff spot. He is their best player. He has been their most important player this year, and obviously their best offensive player with 27 points in 21 games. And uh, just he is he is such a crucial piece to this team, and we've seen in the games that he's missed, that they've really struggled without him, and he's kind of been one of the main pieces holding this all together so far this season. So I'm with you on Marchand. I give him an A, and I think this team isn't even remotely close to a playoff spot without him. All right. Next on the list is Patrice Bergeron, 23 points in 25 games, 10 goals, 13 assists, plus 6. What have you thought of Bergeron so far this year?
I thought he started off a little slow this year, but he's really picked it up in the last 5 games. I believe he has, let's see, 4 points in his last 5 games,
Yep.
including 2 against Calgary. So he's really starting to pick it back up. And honestly, he's been with the Bruins for so long. I was expecting some sort of lull or some sort of slowdown with
Mm-hmm.
him, but yet he still managed to be that steadfast, consistent player that we've expected since, frankly, he came into the league. So I would give him another A. He started off slow, but he's peaking at the right time, which cannot be said for the rest of the team at the moment,
Yes.
but he is peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I'm also going A for Patrice Bergeron. I mean, this guy's in his late 30s now, and he's still producing at a very good rate. And he's putting up points offensively. He also still one of the best in the league defensively as far as defensive forwards go. Just doing everything that he needs to do. Captain of the team. Bergeron's done all that you could possibly expect of him this year, especially at his age. I mean, we're getting to a point where he is going to be slowing down, and he's not going to be able to carry the same load that he did, 4 or 5 years ago. And he's still carrying that load at this point in the season where he's been one of their most important players and obviously their number one center, one of their best players. I don't think you can complain at all about what Patrice Bergeron's done this year, and I give him an A as well.
That's sad to think about him slowing down and him eventually retiring, but it's true. It's
He's
true.
he's getting closer than I think any of us want to think about.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next up, we've got David Pastronok, the third piece of that top line. 26 games played, 21 points, 8 goals, 13 assists, +1 rating. What have your thoughts been on Pastronok this year?
He hasn't been bad this year, and I know that's a very generic thing to say, but his statistics, 8 goals, I would like to see a little bit more from him in the goal department at this point in the season.
Yeah, big time.
I know he's been hurt in some cases, but especially when you consider the way he started off last year in January when he had 2 hat tricks in January or something like that. It was a streak where it was something crazy.
Yeah.
Like
I forget exactly, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
He's sort of missing that magic, and when I think of Pastrnak, I want to think of an elite level player, and he's been very good, don't get me wrong. Like, he's still producing and he's still productive, but he's not been that elite level goal scorer that we've come to see over the past few years. I'd love to see him really kind of ramp it up in the second half of the season because, and we'll get into this a little bit later, quite frankly, the Bruins need him to be that guy. I mean, they need to start hitting on a winning streak and playing more consistent hockey, so I'd love to see more out of him moving forward.
Yeah, I'm going with a B for David Pastrnak. He hasn't been bad, and I don't think you can blame the Bruins' struggles on him or anything like that. He's been a good player, but something has been missing this year. Like he's just not magic. I think is that perfect word. We're used to David Pastrnak being this magical goal scorer, this elite level goal scorer that could literally contend for most goals in the NHL and possibly win a Rocket Richard award. And he hasn't been that this season. He only has 8 goals. His goal scoring production is way down. Honestly, 26 games in, I thought he'd be like at double that. I thought he'd be like 15, 16, somewhere around there as far as goals go. He's not there this year. He only has 8. He has, still produced with assists. He has 13 assists. He's got 21 points, but he's not driving the play. I think when it comes down to it, he hasn't been the game changer that we're used to David Pastronok being. That's been the biggest step back for him this year, is he hasn't been a game changer. He's been good. He hasn't been great. And he hasn't been that play-driving, goal-scoring game changer that we're used to seeing over the past couple of years. And, I think, that's been a step back for him. And I'm going to give him a B this year. We need to see more out of him in the new year. His second half of the season needs to be a lot better than his first.
And quite frankly, he's human, so he can have a down year. And
Yep.
when that happens, you expect or you hope that the rest of the team can pick up the slack. And we're going to get into it here in just a few seconds. Have they yet? No.
No. All right.
No.
Next up, we have our number 1 defenseman, Charlie McAvoy. 25 games played, 4 goals, 11 assists, 15 points, +3 rating for McAvoy. Obviously, their number 1 guy on the back end, plays a ton of minutes every night, all situation player. What's your grade for Charlie this year?
I'd say, honestly, probably a B- because it's hard to kind of judge him this month specifically because the Bruins haven't, quite frankly, played a ton of games. But in November, he had 11 points in 12 games, and he was that kind of, impact player that we saw, the past couple of years. And I just hope that he continues to play at a high level because the Bruins, I still see some leaky defensive play, and he's been kind of their cornerstone for the past couple of years now. So I'll give him a B-. He's not played bad, but kind of like the rest of the players on the roster, I think that he definitely needs to step it up in the, second half of the season. Like I said, this month is unfair to judge for many of these Bruins players because they haven't been able to get into a rhythm with all these cancellations and things like that. So, I'm really excited to see what McAvoy can do in the future, and he had a solid November, so that certainly gives me hope that he can do that.
All right, we're going to differ on this one because I am going A- for Charlie McAvoy. I don't think you can put any more weight on his shoulders than what he's currently carrying right now. I mean, this guy is easily, he's the cornerstone of your defense. He's easily been your best defenseman. I mean, not even remotely close. Literally all the weight of the Bruins D core is on him right now because they don't have anyone else playing at a remotely good enough level on the back end. Like, McAvoy is the one guy that I've watched play on that D this year and has been like a legitimate number 1 guy. And he plays in every situation. He's playing well defensively. He's adding points. I mean, he's scoring at a level that we haven't seen him put up points before. I mean, he's got 15 points in 25 games. There have been, he's usually a guy that's around 20-something points over the course of the whole year. He's got a chance to be a 40-point defenseman this season. He's getting a power play time like he's never gotten before. McAvoy is, I think, the one defenseman for me that I've been thoroughly impressed with this year, and literally nobody else. And it feels like the entire weight of that D-core is on his shoulders. I don't know what else you could ask for him to do, because he's literally doing everything at this point, and it doesn't seem like he's getting much help.
No, and you make a good point there. I just hope that he can continue to play at that high level because, like you said,
if he drops off, the Bruins are done.
Yeah, if he drops off, the Bruins are done, and I think my B- grade just came from the fact that in terms of this month, there hasn't been a lot of action, so I just want to see him continue to kind of pick up where he left off in the month of November. He's been very good. I just want to see more because quite frankly, it's not because he's not producing more. It's because the Bruins are going to need more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
All right, next up, this is going to be an interesting one. Charlie Coyle, 26 games, 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points, a -3 rating. Obviously, stepping up into a bigger role this year, coming off a horrible season last year, but turns out he was injured for almost the whole season. But before I say anything, I just want your grade and thoughts on Charlie Coyle this year.
I'll give him a C, average. We really wanted to see more out of him this year, truthfully, and we haven't seen that. He hasn't been bad. There's been some times on this show where we're like, wow, Charlie Coyle is not performing well. He really needs to step it up, but he hasn't been bad this year. We really wanted to see a step up this year, but we just we just haven't seen that yet. And I feel like there's still time for him to turn it around. And he had a hot start to the season. He played well at the beginning of the season. Now it's just kind of a middle ground. We're stuck in the middle ground
Yeah,
with him.
I'm going B minus for Charlie Coyle because I actually think he's been okay this year. He is not one of the Bruins' biggest problems. Like he's been fine. I mean, he hasn't been great, but he's been fine. 7 goals, 7 assists. I mean, that's decent production,
Mm.
especially from a team that really isn't getting much as far as secondary production. 14 points isn't too bad. Obviously, we would have been great if we could get more out of him. If he could be back to a 50-point player like he was in Minnesota, that would be ideal. But I mean, this is certainly a step up from where he was at last year. Last season, he was absolutely abysmal, and he's been a lot better than that this year. I think, I give him some credit for that, able to bounce back in that kind of way, but still, not anything spectacular, not anything that would make me want to give him an A or anything like that. But I don't think he's been the Bruins' biggest problem, far
No.
from it this year. And again, he actually was really good at the start of the season.
Yeah,
He's
he was.
tailed off quite a bit over the last month or so, but he was really good at the start of the season. I want to see him get back producing like he was in that, October and early November. And if we can get that out of Charlie Coyle, I
Mm.
think that, he's going to be one of the assets to this team and not a liability. But to me, he's been okay. I'm happy to see him playing a lot better than he did last year because last year was absolutely atrocious, and he's definitely stepped it up from there this season. So I'm going B minus for Coyle. But the next guy, another interesting one here, Taylor Hall.
Ooh.
Fresh on his new contract, 26 games, only 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points, same as Coyle. Just Taylor Hall, what do you got?
C minus because I thought honestly he would be at the 12 13 goal mark at this point in the season, and that's one of the reasons why the Bruins acquired Taylor Hall last April or this past April was because he provided secondary scoring. He's not doing that now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly expected a lot more out of him, and it's kind of interesting. We've talked about on the show before secondary scoring, and two guys whose names that we've constantly brought up, Charlie Coyle and Taylor Hall. And so far, both of those, I mean, Coyle is who he is at this point, and I don't think there was a ton of expectation for him coming into the season, but I really expected a lot more of Taylor Hall. Kind of like Pastronok, I expected him to be that dynamic playmaker, not at the Pastronok level, but as a player that could generate secondary scoring and be a dynamic playmaker in a secondary way. Again, I don't want him
Mm-hmm.
to. It would be great if he would, play at a Pastrnak level that we know Pastrnak can play at, quite frankly. But um, Taylor Hall just hasn't had that same sort of spark that we saw at the end of last season,
Yep.
and it's kind of hurting the Bruins right now.
Yeah, completely agree with you. I'm at a C minus on Taylor Hall as well. I had way higher expectations for Taylor Hall than Charlie Coyle. So
Mm.
with them both having 14 points, I'm fine with Coyle at 14 points. I expected a lot more from Taylor Hall.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
Especially with the way that he played at the end of last season, coming in after the trade deadline or at the trade deadline and just really being a play driver, being a dynamic player, really helping the Bruins offensively. He hasn't done that this year. I mean,
No.
he's been okay at best for the Bruins this year. They need a lot more out of him. We talk about this team having so many secondary scoring struggles. He's a big reason why. 5 goals is not going to cut it. This is a guy who was a league MVP a few years ago and is now, playing on a second line and only has 14 points in 26 games. That is just not good enough. Taylor Hall's been one of the players that I've been fairly disappointed with this year. And I think that if Boston's going to be any sort of threat in the Eastern Conference, they're going to need a lot more out of Taylor Hall.
Yeah, and definitely. I look at his month of November, 12 games, 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points and a -2. That is not going to cut it.
That's not good enough. Not even close.
No, not at all. So.
All right, next up on the list. This is going to be fun. Jake Debrusk.
Get him out of here. I'm tired of him. I'm not even going to give him a grade. I'm just going to say my grade is get him out of Boston. I loved Jake Debrusk, but he's just so, I don't know if you can swear on this podcast, but so damn frustrating. I can't even take it anymore. He's shown flashes of potential since he's been here. Now he wants a trade. I'm all done with him. I'm not going to even give him a grade. Get him out of here. I'm tired of him. He hasn't performed up to the expectations this season. Not that there were any to begin with after his free fall last year, but so much wasted talent, so much potential, and he was a member of that 2015 draft class, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. First
round
pick. Zaboro, Zaboro, Debrusk, and Senyshyn.
Jake Debrusk, goodbye. See you later. I'll give him a D. If you want a grade, I'll give him a D. He's been very underwhelming, and he wants out of Boston. I just don't think it's a good fit anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've made my thoughts on Debrusk very well known over the past couple of years, and again, a guy that I loved when he first came in, and
I loved him,
completely soured on. This was a guy that I thought would be a 30-goal scorer in the NHL. He has 5 goals this year in 25 games. He has 8 total points as a -3. I mean, D at best for me with Debrusk. Never lived up to potential, and I want him out of here as soon as possible. So I'm with you on that. Craig Smith, 19 games played, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points, and a -4. I have some pretty harsh feelings for Craig Smith this year, even though I do like him, and I really liked him last year. But man, it's been a rough go for him this season.
Yeah, it really has been a rough go. I mean, he's not going to be a 50-goal scorer by any means.
No,
but what this season showed to me about Craig Smith was that last year was a bit of an anomaly. It seemed like he's always at the front of the net, always available for tip-ins, playing hard, playing aggressive. And I'm not saying that playing hard and playing aggressive, was an anomaly. But when you look at how active he was in plays and how often he seemed to be at least getting pucks to the net, that was encouraging to see. Now it's just been a completely different story. I mean, I was not hoping that he would be the primary secondary scorer, but I was hoping he'd be a nice piece that the Bruins could use to supplement that. Because like we said on the show before, good teams have a lot of depth, and Craig Smith was one of the depth guys that I thought could come in and make a, sizable impact. Nothing, all-star level, but he hasn't even made a sizable impact. Honestly, I really liked him last year, and I've been disappointed by him this year.
Yeah, see, I actually think that this year is the anomaly in a really bad way. This has just been a garbage year for Craig Smith. I mean, he's a consistent 20-goal scorer and has been for much of his career, right around 20 goals with Nashville all those years. Had a pretty decent year last year with the Bruins. I like Craig Smith a lot as a player. This has been a garbage year for Craig Smith. He has been just, doing almost nothing for this team. Really, really disappointed with the season that he's having. And obviously injuries played a role in that. He's missed some games. He's also played some games through an injury where he hasn't been at it 100%. But, Craig Smith is a D player for me this season. 7 points and 2 goals is not going to cut it for a guy that needed to be a pretty helpful middle six scorer for this team. He hasn't been that. So I've been very disappointed with Craig Smith, and I'm giving him a D for this season so far.
Yeah, he it's just been that type of season for the Bruins overall, where players that you expect to do really well have struggled,
Yep.
and in a year that we talked about was so pivotal, it seems like a lot of the team is just falling right flat on their faces.
Yeah, next up we got another defenseman here, Matt Grislick. 26 games played for Grizz. 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points, -2 rating. He's kind of been all over the lineup, playing with different partners this year. What are your thoughts on Grizz so far?
I think that he hasn't played bad. Again, he's another one of those tweeners. He hasn't played bad, but he hasn't played great.
Yeah.
Um, I think he's another player to me that has been incredibly frustrating overall, not in a Debrusk way, in the sense that Debrusk wants to be out of here, but and I know this isn't his fault, but the injuries have really killed him over the course of his career, meaning Grislick. And this year, he's been a little bit healthier, but I still need to see more out of him defensively.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he's healthy and playing at his best, Grislick can be a very solid defenseman, and the Bruins need depth at the defensive position right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give him C plus because, like you said, he's been all over the lineup and he's had to adjust to certain situations that were out of his control. But I need him to step up and help the Bruins defensively.
Yeah, I'm going with a C for Matt Grislick this year. I need to see way more out of him offensively. I mean, this
Mm,
is a guy that's supposed to be an offensive defenseman. And outside of, obviously McAvoy's your number one guy and your Norris level type guy who's going to be the, top at all ends of the ice. But Grislick's supposed to be, another guy that's providing offense. And he only has 6 points in 26 games. And he's also the second leading scorer among defensemen for the Bruins behind Mcavoy. I mean, 6 points as your second leading scorer on the back end is not going to cut it. They need a lot more offense from the D. And Grislick needs to be one of those main offensive producers on the back end, and he hasn't been this year. He only has 1 goal, 6 points. That's just not good enough. This is a guy that needs to be in double-digit points, just like McAvoy. And I mean, he's been okay. He hasn't been bad. He's not really hurting the team. He's not a liability, but
mm.
they need to see a lot more out of him offensively. And until that happens, he's a C player for me. They need somebody on this back end to step up other than McAvoy. And I look for Grislick to be that guy offensively who needs to add some points here because he hasn't done nearly enough of it so far.
And I totally agree that he should be an offensive defenseman. And watching him at BU, that's exactly what he was. But even when you look at how he played last year, Grislick only had 5 goals. So, you know, and again, injuries were an issue last year. I understand that. But maybe that offensive part of his game just hasn't translated to the NHL. And I get that, in what was it, 2017, 2018, he had uh 20 points or something like that. So he does have the potential, but it just hasn't really shown through yet. And he's, not old. He's 27, but again, I just need to see more out of him. I think he can bring offense to his game, but between injuries and just overall play, he just hasn't been able to get going.
Yeah, I mean he had back-to-back 20-point seasons in 2019, 2020 and 2020, 2021. He
Yeah.
went 20 points back to back. Only 6 points this year through 27 games. See, it just he needs to get back to like in a full 82 game season, he should be 30 plus, maybe approaching 40 points.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that hasn't been the case this year for him.
Yeah, he's one of the players I hope really picks it up
Yeah,
once the Bruins can kind of get back to a normal schedule, because they're gonna need him. They're gonna need him just like Taylor Hall. The
absolutely.
Bruins are gonna need him to provide supplementary help, and they can't afford to have McAvoy do it all by himself, or offensively they can't afford to have the big three do it all by themselves. They're going to need help, and the players that we've expected help from haven't helped so far.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we got Derek Forber, another defenseman here, newcomer to the team. 26 games played, 4 goals, 1 assist, 5 points, a -1 rating. No fights yet for Forber, which I was kind of hoping he'd bring some physicality. He hasn't dropped the gloves yet, but just overall, what have you thought of Forber so far?
I mean, when you look at what he did last year, he had 12 points, so he's not going to be that big
No,
scorer.
he's not an offensive
He's not
defenseman.
an offensive player at all. And, the Bruins brought him in to provide supplementary help defensively, and he's a -1, which isn't awful, but it's something that you would like to see fixed. I'll give him a C just because I feel like he hasn't really found his stride yet in Boston. I do have hope that he can be a good depth piece for McAvoy, and maybe that will come. Maybe in the second half of the season, we'll see him really step up. But I need to see more out of him, not because I don't think he's playing well, but just because I need to feel comfortable that he can play a big role with this team.
Yeah, I'm going C+ for Derek Forbert this year. Like, he is what he is. I wish they'd stop trying to make him a top pair
Yeah,
defenseman. Like, stop playing him on the top pair, because that's not what Derek Forbert is. Derek Forbert is a third pair defensive defenseman who's really good on the penalty kill, blocks a lot of shots, and can play physical when you need him to.
yeah,
That's what he is, and,
yeah.
and that's kind of what he's been for the Bruins. I'm surprised he has 4 goals. That's kind of weird because I never would have expected him to have 4 goals over the course of the entire season, never mind just 26 games in. But he's obviously gotten some good bounces and been able to put a few in the net, but he's not an offensive defenseman. He's got 5 points. He's a defensive guy, and he's truly on a good team. He's a third pair D man. That's where he belongs. And um, I wish that the Bruins would use him more, and realize that that's what he is, and not try and make him something that he's not. But he's been fine. Like I like Forbert a lot. I've liked him throughout his career, but I like him in the right role, and the Bruins need to use him in the right role. Killing penalties, which he has done, and they have been using him on the PK as a main penalty killer. As a third pair defensive guy, that's what he is. He's kind of similar to what Kevin Miller brought to the table, who's
Mm.
now obviously retired. That Forbert was kind of that kind of fill-in, and again, like he hasn't been a problem. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't exactly lit it up either. But I would say C+ for me for Forbert. He's been fine, and I just
Yeah, and this is a classic case of a player being put into a situation that he's maybe not accustomed to or familiar with. So I can't really, rag on him too hard. I like you said, I don't think the Bruins are using him correctly. And when you put, what's the saying, a round thing into a square hole, it's not going to
yeah,
fit. And
yeah.
so I don't really blame him too much. I think the Bruins are asking him to do too much. I mean, you and I even talked about it. He is a player that plays physical, like you said, can block a shot, but he's not somebody that you want as a starting defenseman. He's the type of third line player that you'll need in the playoffs with grit. And
hmm
so I can't really rag on him too much. I think the Bruins have put him in a difficult spot, and he's trying his best. The 4 goals are nice to see, but I'll be interested to see if the Bruins kind of realize that they are dealing with a certain situation where they're misusing the player, or if they
hmm
continue to use him in that way.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we have another defenseman next up, Mike Riley, another guy that came over at the trade deadline last year and then signed again in the offseason to come back to Boston. 23 games played, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, a +1 rating. What have you thought of Riley so far this year?
Honestly, I was expecting a little more offensively from Riley, especially
Yep,
when you consider what
big
he
time.
did at the end of last year. I thought he would be a nice addition. He is very, crafty with the puck. He can get the puck into the zone. There's been many times, I want to say more last year, so that he was able to keep plays alive with
Mm-hmm.
how he handled the puck and you know, the strength of his shot at the top of the blue line and things like that. And I just haven't seen that from him this year. I mean, I was hoping that he would be able to bring, again, complementary offense. It seems like I've said that 75 times today, but
Yep.
that type of complementary offense on the defense and take the pressure off of McAvoy because you see it all the time in sports. And sorry if I'm going on a little sidetrack rant here. When you rely too much on the top player, they burn out quickly.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that that doesn't happen with McAvoy. But in Riley's case, I was hoping he could alleviate some of that pressure this season off of McAvoy. And so far, he hasn't really done that. Like I said, I really liked him when he came here. And as a fan, I'm hoping he kind of finds his groove and really starts to play well because he is fun to watch play, but he just hasn't been producing this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going with a C- for Riley. I expected a lot more, especially on the offensive side of things. And this was a guy that the Bruins were going to be relying on,
Mm,
much like Matt Grislick, to
mm,
bring some offense from the back end and you
yep,
know provide some production from back there. And like Grislick, he hasn't, and he only has 5 points. I mean, the 3 goals are good, but 2 assists. You're a puck moving defenseman and you have 2 assists.
yeah,
I mean, this is a guy like if he had 3 goals and 10 assists and for 13 points, that'd be great. That's what I was looking for from Mike Riley, and that hasn't been the case this year. Also, he's turned the puck over a lot.
yeah,
Watching Bruins games, I've noticed he's turned the puck over a lot, and that's been aggravating as a fan watching. Like this
yep.
guy, that his strong suit is supposed to be his ability with the puck, his puck moving. He's a good skater and he passes well. Like that's what Mike Riley was supposed to be, and he's given the puck away quite a bit this year. Yeah, I've been pretty disappointed with him. I'm going C- for Riley. I wanted to see a lot more.
And it's interesting that you mentioned turning the puck over because it seems like that's been a Bruins problem for a number of years now,
Hmm.
especially in their own zone. And so I'm wondering if this is a coaching issue and things like that, but that's another episode. I'll let you save that.
Yeah.
I'll let you save that for another day. It's just interesting to kind of watch some of these players that we really thought were going to be, big, key players for this team just kind of fall flat.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, we got Curtis Lazar. Uh, 20 games played, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, a +1 rating. Obviously, generally a fourth liner for the Bruins. Came over with Hall in the trade last year. Just what do you thought of Lazar's season so far?
He's been okay. I mean, he hasn't been spectacular. I mean, he has recorded 2 points in his last 5 games, so he has done something. I mean, and I know he's had his issues with, COVID protocol and things like that, so that can obviously take a player out of his rhythm.
Hmm.
Um, Truthfully, I always thought of him as a bonus piece in
Yep.
the, Taylor Hall, Mike
Yeah.
Riley. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and Curtis Lazar. But that's not to say I don't think he's a good player, but I really didn't have any expectations for him this year, good or bad. I didn't really want to put too much pressure on him. I honestly looked not at the big picture, but I looked at him as if he can play well, that's great. If
Hmm.
he can't, then at least we have the two pieces in Hall and Riley for that trade at the time. So I kind of automatically just put him as a player where, if we got something from him and if he played well, that's awesome. And if he didn't, the bigger picture with that acquisition and even the subsequent contract extension for Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything we got from Lazar was gravy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going with a B for Lazar. I think he's been fine. He's a fourth liner. That's what he is, and
Yeah.
he's played that role fairly well. I mean, I really didn't have big expectations for him coming in. I just thought if he could be a solid fourth liner, that'd be what the Bruins needed from him, and that would be an upgrade over what Sean Corrali gave us last year. And I think Lazar's been fine this season. So, fourth line guy playing decently well in that role. I'll give him a B.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about lack of depth at certain positions and guys that can't fit. He's been an anomaly to both of those things. He's both fit his role really well, and he's given the Bruins some much needed depth on the fourth line.
Yes. All right. Next up, we got Brandon Carlo, another defenseman here. 24 games played, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, a +1 rating. I have some thoughts on Carlo, but I'll let you
I'll
go
let you go
first.
first. I'll let you go first because your thoughts are always way more interesting than mine.
All right. Brandon Carlo, I just like he's been solid, but he hasn't been. I don't think he's been as good as he's been the past couple of years. I haven't seen the same level of impact. I guess that's where the step back has been.
Mm.
I feel like Brandon Carlo hasn't been as impactful as he was last year or even the year before. Um, I'll give him a C. Like I just he's never been a big offensive producer, and this isn't about offense. This is about him putting up points. 5 points in 24 games. That's fine for Carlo, about what we would expect. Puts him to be at about 15 points at the end of the year. That's pretty much where I thought. Carlo's not an offensive guy. He's a defensive defenseman. But I just feel like he hasn't been that shutdown guy this year that we're used to seeing. And he just hasn't had the same level of impact. And I don't. He's a guy that I want to see more noticeable and more impactful on the ice in the second half of the season. Um, I guess
One,
that's my biggest thing with
yeah.
him.
One thing I've wondered this season is you remember the beating he took during the Islanders series
Yep.
and how he was playing hurt. I'm wondering if we're still seeing some of the lingering effects of that. And throughout his entire career, he's had trouble staying healthy.
Yep.
But this year, you talk about lack of his normal production and not being that shutdown defenseman. I don't want to say the injuries are catching up to him because he still has a lot of his career to go,
Mhm.
but I am wondering if the injuries are catching up to him in the sense that he's still kind of finding his footing and hasn't fully recovered yet from last spring.
I think psychologically they could be still
Oh
having an
yeah,
impact. He could be playing a little more tentative because he has that in the back of his mind. And
who could blame him really? I mean,
yeah, but something similar to David Pastronok, something seems to be missing with Carlo this year.
well, and it's interesting that you bring up Pastrnak too because Carlo and Pastrnak are two players that the Bruins have relied on quite a bit throughout the course of their careers,
Yep.
and that's going to catch up to you at some point, especially when you talk about the position that Carlo plays and the constant goal scoring needed from Pastrnak. I'm not I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of catching up to them a bit, and I'm hoping it doesn't affect them for the rest of their careers. Obviously,
Mhm.
I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but it is something that you think about, and I'm just hoping that the Bruins don't burn these two out early. At least with like Marchand and Bergeron, like they've had long productive careers, but they haven't always been heavily reliant on Bergeron and Marchand
Yep.
throughout their entire careers. Pastrnak and Carlo are a different story.
Yeah. All right, next up, we got another newcomer here, Eric Howla, coming in. 25 games played, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points, a -4 rating. I'll let you go first on this one while I get ready to say what I'm going to say.
Oh boy, oh boy, you know it's gonna be a good one. I again, I expected more out of him. I really did. I'm not expecting him to be a 25 goal scorer. He is what he is, but he was one of the free agent additions that I thought would be a good supplemental piece, and he just hasn't been that. He just hasn't been able to be that piece that we've all hoped for. And, you know, actually, I'll save my rant on Haula for another day because it's totally unrelated to what we're trying to do here. But I will say this makes me wonder how effective these free agent signings were when we take a look at these players and see who's bottomed out, see who's performing well.
Yeah, I'm going with a big fat D for Erik Haula. This
Did I even give him
guy.
a grade? Did I give him a grade or
No,
no?
I don't think
That
so.
doesn't. D. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm not impressed.
No, I'm not impressed at all. He should be so much better than what he's shown so far.
Yeah.
Erik Haula is perfectly capable of being a very good third line center in the NHL. And he was pretty good for Nashville last year. 5 points in 25 games, a -4 player, not really providing anything to the Bruins. Haula's been one of the biggest disappointments for me on this Bruins team. I expected so much more from him, and he hasn't even come close to being good enough. So he is a guy that I've been completely disappointed with. I hope he can turn it around in the second half, but based on what I've seen so far, I'm not really keeping my hopes up. And D for Haula. He has not been anything like I thought that he was going to be in a Bruins uniform.
Yeah, it's been a rough skating, no pun intended, for Haula. And again, I hope he turns it on in the second half. I feel like I've said that 75 times too, but nothing has shown me that he's been able to do that, at least in the first half of the season.
No, not yet. All right, another newcomer here, Tomas Nosick, 23 games played, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, -2, fourth line guy. What have you thought of Nosick so far?
Not good, not bad. I mean, he is what he is. He's a fourth line guy. I mean, when you look at this Bruins fourth line, he is involved in plays, but he just doesn't show up on the stat sheet. So I'll give him another C. I hate to give players D's, but as we go down this list, I'm gonna start giving some more unfriendly grades.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you. I'm giving Nosick a C. Like there's been some things that I've really liked about his game, and there's been some things that I think need to certainly improve. Let's see. This guy, I expected more offensively from him. He had 18 points last year with Vegas, and he had 15 points a year before and 17 points a year before that. So like he's been a producer for at least when he was in Vegas, he was an offensive producer, especially for a fourth liner. He put up good points for a fourth line guy. Only 4 points this year. I expected a lot more offensively from him. And that, we haven't really seen it yet. But there are some things that I do like about his game. I think he plays with a lot of energy. I think he's a good forechecker. He's a decent skater. He's involved in the play. He's responsible defensively. So Nosick definitely hasn't been bad. I just expected a lot more offensively from him and thought that he could really score in a fourth line role like he did in Vegas, and he hasn't done that yet as a Bruin. So I'm going with a C for Nosick.
Yeah, and again, he's a fourth line guy, so typically those guys are going to be your, nose to the grindstone type of players.
Yep.
But I'll be interested to see what he does because anytime I watch the Bruins, I do notice his energy, and it looks like he wants to be out there, which sounds so cliche to say, but it looks like he wants to, make plays and tries to get involved. So that certainly counts for something in my book.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next up we have Anton Bleed, who's only played 12 games but has 1 goal, 3 assists for 4 points, and a +1 rating. Pretty much a guy that's been a career AHLer, actually kind of showing up and having an impact this year at the NHL level. What have you thought of Bleed so far?
I thought, like you said, a career AHLer, and he's made the most of his time, it seems like, when he's been up here.
Yep.
And I'm really happy for him because I love to see guys, get to the NHL after being in the AHL for so long. So I'll give him a C+. He hasn't had a ton of opportunity, but he's made the most of what he's had. I mean, granted, when we had conversations, off the air, he's been a guy that we've always thought was sort of a bust, but now he's kind of starting to show a little bit of what he can do. So I'll give him a C plus.
I've been thoroughly impressed with Bleed this year. This is a guy that I never really thought would be an NHLer, and thought that he was pretty much going to be an AHL guy, but he's showing offense production that we've never seen from him before, at least in a Boston uniform. In Providence, he's been a good player there, but in Boston, he's never played this well. 4 points in 12 games, a goal, a plus rating. I've been thoroughly impressed with Bleed. He hasn't played a ton of games, but he's completely made the most of the time that he's gotten in Boston this year, and it's making it hard to take him out of the lineup. How do you healthy scratch this guy when he's outplaying so many of the other depth players for the Bruins that aren't playing that well? I'm giving Bleed an A for what I've seen from him this year. I wasn't expecting him to really have any sort of impact in Boston at all, and for him to come in and be one of your best depth players, I think he's outplayed a lot of the more traditional NHL regulars like Howla, and like some guys that we're going to be talking about here coming up. I mean, Bleed to me has been a big bright spot for this team so far.
Yeah, and he's finally getting his first chance at extended NHL action, and it seems like he's really enjoying it. You can tell by the way he plays
Yeah.
that he really wants to be here, and he's really making the most of the opportunity. And it's kind of interesting to watch that kind of paradox while other guys coast, truthfully.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next up, oh boy, we got Nick Foligno. Big offseason addition, 18 games, 0 goals for Foligno so far, only 4 assists for 4 points, a -8 rating. Does have a couple fights, but that's about the only positive thing he's done this year. And it sucks because I really like Nick Foligno, and I loved him throughout his entire career. I
Yeah.
loved his style of play. He's a power forward, good leader, sticks up for his teammates. There's so much I love about Nick Foligno, but he's just done nothing offensively this season.
Yeah, and he was a guy that I thought was going to be not a big point producer, but I thought he was going to be key to
The
the
third line,
offense.
at
Yeah, the
least.
third line, definitely. And he just hasn't been able to do that. He was the guy that I was most excited about the Bruins getting because, again, I thought he would add depth, but he's been a massive disappointment.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that maybe we see some signs of life down the road. But I think, and this is just generally speaking, what you see with this Bruins team is what you're going to get. We want them to be better and we want them to have a good second half, but I think this year it's just been a middle of the road type of team. I'm gonna give him a D, and
Yep.
I've been giving generous grades throughout this entire thing because I don't like to give negative grades, but I really thought that Foligno was going to have a bigger role than he is, and I was really excited like you when the Bruins signed him, but he just hasn't been able to produce or live up to what we thought he could do. So
Yep.
I'm gonna give him a D. He's been a massive disappointment. Probably I would even go as far as say one of the most disappointing players on this Bruins roster.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'm giving him a D as well, and as much as that hurts because I really like him as a player
Yeah.
and been a big fan of his for years, but
Mhm.
just doing nothing offensively, and that's got to change. I mean, if the Bruins are going to do anything this year, that's got to change. So, big disappointment in Foligno. All right, Jakob Zaboro, well, he's out for the rest of the year. He only played 10 games. Now he's out for the rest of the year with a torn ACL. I guess we'll just quickly touch on him. 3 assists in 10 games for 3 points, a +1 rating. Unfortunately, we're not going to see him again this year, but I honestly, I thought he played really well. This was the best NHL stint that he's
Yeah.
had in his career. Um, I don't know how you feel about what Zabora was able to do before the very unfortunate injury.
Yeah. No, I was honestly really impressed because he was always one of the guys that we referred to as like a bad a bad draft pick that the Bruins
2015.
made. Yeah. Yeah, that damn 2015 class is really coming back to haunt us. But no, I thought he played really well. I mean, I'm gonna give him an incomplete grade because I
Yeah,
really liked what I saw from him when he played, and you can't judge a guy because he's hurt. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So for me it's incomplete. If he can continue to play well once he comes back from surgery and is healthy again, then I think he could turn out to be a decent player. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, it stinks that he got hurt
Yeah.
because he was playing the best hockey of his career before that injury. And hopefully he's able to come back next year, and this isn't too big of a step back, but where it's been, he's been around a while now, and he hasn't really lived up to that draft selection. It's starting to seem like the clock is ticking here, and this
Yep.
injury could not have come at a worse time for Jakob Zaboro.
If there is one positive, I'll say that it is a torn ACL, which we are seeing a lot more in sports, and the recovery times are beginning to get a lot quicker.
Yep.
It's not positive, let me be clear. It's not positive that he has a torn ACL, but the recovery times are a lot quicker, and they seem to, in the sports world, kind of figured out a way to create exercise programs and
Mhm.
stuff like that to help them get back on track. So I do hope he can come back next season.
Yeah, definitely, and wishing him all the best in his recovery without a doubt. All right, we
Absolutely.
got 3 players left before we get to the goaltenders. Trent Frederick, 18 games played, 0 goals, 3 assists, a -1 rating, 3 points, obviously. Um, what have you seen from Freddie this year? What do you think? Only 11 penalty minutes, which I find pretty interesting. I have thoughts on him, but I want to get your just overall grade and just what you think of Frederick this year.
You kind of touched on that just right there, the 11 penalty minutes. I thought he was going to be not the goon. Well, yeah, I guess you could call like the goon of
Yeah,
the
he was going to be the
of this
tough guy.
Bruins
He
team.
was
Yeah.
supposed to be the tough guy.
He was supposed to be the guy that was not the scorer, didn't show up in the stat sheet, but a player that was going to be physical, like the Milan Lucic or Sean Thornton, type of player, not like them. Let's be clear before some Bruins fans get into an uproar. That type of player, and
Yeah, that guy
he
in the
just has,
lineup
yeah,
who stands up. Yeah,
yeah, he just hasn't been able to do that for whatever reason. And last year I was really encouraged by his play because
he
he
fought
was
a
not afraid
lot.
to yeah, he was not afraid to throw down the gloves at all. This year, however, it's a different story. What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I'm thoroughly disappointed in his lack of physicality. He hasn't been the tough guy. He hasn't been fighting. He hasn't really been hitting all that much. He's not the physical bruising player that
Mm,
he was supposed to be. And last year, he did do that, and that he was an agitator. He got under the opponent's skin. He was physical. He dropped the gloves a bunch. Like, I want that Trent Frederick. And I mean, he can chip in here and there offensively. He does have 3 assists, but I'm not expecting big points from him. He's a
no.
fourth line player. I was expecting way more on the physicality front, and it hasn't been there. So I'm gonna have to go with a D+ for Frederick this year.
Yep.
I need to see way more from him in that grinding, physical, agitator type role. He's just been way too quiet this year, way too quiet, and he needs to get himself involved in that a lot more. And until that happens, I'm gonna be disappointed in what he's brought.
Yeah, I've been really disappointed with him this year. Like you said, I thought he was going to be that type of player that's not afraid to throw down the gloves and really fight and stick up for his teammates and stuff like that. But he hasn't been that, and he just adds to the list of disappointing Bruins players this year. So
Yep.
I don't want to keep saying we'll see what happens in the second half, but I think with Frederick, honestly, what we saw, in the first half and throughout the season so far is unfortunately what we're gonna get.
All right, Connor Clifton, 17 games played, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, -4 rating, depth defenseman. Cliffy this year, what have how's it been in your eyes?
Meh, it's been meh. I mean,
Yeah, he's such a meh player most of the time.
and he has managed to figure out ways to get himself on the ice, but I, there's nothing I can, really say about him. Just meh. I mean,
Yeah,
he's just your average defenseman, and I wasn't really expecting a ton from him, and I'll give him, a C just because, he is what he is,
yep,
and I think that's just the way he's going to be for the rest of his career.
Yeah, he's a organizational depth D man. The fact that he's in the top 6 for the Bruins shows that they don't have much depth on the back end. He's just a mad player. He's a guy that should be a number 7 or number 8 and can fill in when you need him, but doesn't have a huge responsibility. And I'll go with a C as well. It's just kind of, right down the middle. Kind of, you get what you get what you thought you were going to get out of him, and it's just a depth role, and I think he plays too big of a role on the Bruins because they don't have a strong enough back end. But it just kind of is what it is with him. So I'm in C as well. And the last one here is Carson Coolman. 18 games played, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, even rating. Kind of been thrown up and down the lineup depending on who's in and who's out. But Coolman, what do you think of him?
I'm not sure, and the reason I say that is because, like you just said, he's been thrown up and down the lineup. I really like, in past years, seeing, he does have good puck handling skills, and he is, an aggressive type of player, but he's just been inconsistent this year. And, I think what we see with Coolman is what we're going to get. I mean, he's not a big point producer. He has 2 points this year, which matches his, total from last year.
Mm-hmm.
He was more, in my opinion, that physical type of player. He wasn't going to necessarily, be a big-time goal scorer, but I'll give him a C just because, he is what he is. Just like so many of these bottom
Mm-hmm.
players on the roster, he is what he is. Will there be room for growth? Maybe, but I think at this point in his career, he's
just an
4
extra.
seasons in. Yeah, he's 4 seasons in. What we see is what we're going to get.
Yeah, see, I want to see more offense. 2 points out of Coolman is not going to cut it. I'm giving him a C minus. Listen, he's an extra forward. He's not a guy that should be in a regular NHL lineup. He's a 13th, 14th forward type guy. But 2 points in 18 games, you got to get more production than that out of this guy. And we talked about one of the biggest issues with the Bruins being not having secondary scoring. Well, Carson Coolman having 2 points is a reason why. Nick Foligno having 4 points is a reason why. Eric Howla having 5 points is a reason why.
Yep.
These guys are not producing at the level that they need to produce. Get some pucks in the net. And Coolman's another disappointing guy offensively. He's got a ton of speed. He's got a decent shot. He's a smaller guy, but, he can take the puck to the net and whatnot. But it's not going to cut it offensively. And to me, he's disappointing. I want to see more production out of him. And I'm going with a C minus for Carson Coolman.
He's never been a big point producer, which is kind of been disappointing, like you said.
Because that's his only what else does he bring to the table? He's a speedy player with some offense. He's small. It's not like he's going to be fighting or lighting guys up like Frederick. He's not a traditional fourth line type player. If he doesn't produce offensively, he literally brings nothing to the table.
And I honestly think that by this point in his career, that that's exactly what he is. He doesn't bring much because he's never been a big point producer. He has the skills to be a big point producer and a big offensive player, but it's just not been there. So I think
he belongs in the AHL in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think it's a depth issue, which is why he's up here.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
With a lot of these players, yeah, but I mean, I thought he was going to be, playing a bigger role for this organization than he has been, and at this point in his career, this is it for him. What he brings to the table
he is what he is.
He is what he is.
He is what he is, absolutely. All right, we got to get to the goaltenders now here quickly. I guess we'll start with Lena Salmark, the newcomer. 7-5-0 record so far this season, a .922 save percentage, which I'm surprised it's that high, but actually he's been playing really well recently, so that's helped it a lot. And a 2.52 goals against average this season. Does he have any shutout? Nope, no shutouts yet, but he does have an assist, so get him on the score sheet with that.
Hey, there you go.
Ullmark. I have, so I want you to go first because I'm gonna talk in depth about Ullmark and like how I've been with him this year. But just what are your thoughts on him so far?
He's been very, very up and down this year, and he, like you said, he has played better as of late. I mean, I really liked the signing when the Bruins brought him to Boston because he had a winning record with Buffalo, which is very hard to do.
Oh yeah.
He has stretches where he plays really well, and then other stretches where he can't stop a beach ball. So in that respect, he's been kind of frustrating for me, but he has been playing better. So I'm hoping that continues, because the Bruins definitely need um, definitely need that solid backup goaltender.
All right, so I've always been a big Allmark guy, and people who watch the show, I was ranting and raving about him all off season after the Bruins signed him, and there's no doubt he got off to a slow start. He was not good out of the gate. He was really struggling. I think there was a big adjustment there with him changing teams and whatnot.
Mm.
He's been so good of late, though. I mean, his numbers over the past month or almost two now have significantly improved. And all in all, I mean, he's got a .922 save percentage. That is very good. That is, if you're over .920 in the NHL, that is very good. 2.52
Yep.
goals against, very not great, but solid number there. I'm gonna go with a B plus for Allmark.
Yeah.
He got off to a slow start, but I think that's past now. I think he's settled in. And I'm expecting the Lena Salmark that we've seen for the past couple of months, past at least 6 weeks. I think we're going to see that for the rest of the year. And I'm still pretty high on him. I think there was definitely an adjustment period there, but I have high expectations for him. I like him a lot. He obviously played really well in Buffalo, and he's on a much better team now. I think Ullmark's going to be a really solid goaltender, and I've got him at a B plus, and I think he's going to be able to keep that up the rest of the season.
And even when you look at the stat sheet, the numbers can be a little bit deceiving. Yes, he allowed 2 goals against Calgary and 2 goals against Edmonton on December 11th and 9th, but he faced 40 and 41 shots.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, all things considered, especially when you take into consideration Boston's defensive woes.
Yeah.
Of late.
And if you hold a team to 2 goals, you should win that game.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with a team giving up 2 goals a game. That's fine. You should win those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far, the Bruins have been up and down in those games.
Yeah, they've been up and down in actually doing that. All
Yeah,
right,
but
Jeremy Swayman, the youngster, his first real full NHL season this year. He is 7-5-2 on the year with a .917 save percentage and a 2.29 goals against average. He does have 1 shutout on the year. Only Bruins goaltender with a shutout. What have you thought of Sway so far?
now we're starting to see how he's been able to perform over the course of an entire season. He got hot at the end of last year, but it was a small sample size.
Yep.
So we really wanted to see what he could do in extended action. And, his last game against Vegas, 4 goals. That's never something you want to see happen. His December 4th against Tampa Bay, 3 goals. So he's had stretches where he's been really good, but it seems like, especially with the elite teams, he tends to struggle. And granted, I'm not going to get too down on him for that because, like I said, and like you all know, this is his first season of NHL action. You just hope that he learns from this. And, there are going to be bumps in the road when you're starting a rookie goaltender.
Yep.
And he has shown flashes of potential. You just would like to see some things cleaned up a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm going with a B for Jeremy Swayman. He's been fine. I mean, you literally have a real young goalie here in net. You have a rookie in net. How high can your expectations actually, realistically be? He's got a 2.29 goals against, which is a fantastic number. .917 save percentage is, more than respectable. I mean, I
Exactly.
think John Gibson in Anaheim is right around there as far as save percentage. So if Jeremy Swayman can be John Gibson, that's pretty darn good. So, I really, all in all, I don't think goaltending has been even remotely a problem for the Bruins this year. Their goaltending has been fine. They have much bigger issues elsewhere. And that's why they've struggled this year. The goalies, I mean, they're doing everything they can. Their
Yeah.
save percentage numbers are phenomenal. If your goaltenders are stopping 92% of the shots against, that's all you can ask for. And it's on the rest of the team to be able to pick up and win you games in other areas. Because a 922 save percentage for Ullmark and a 917 save percentage for Swayman is more than good enough. So. I think the goalies have been fine in my opinion this year.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you look at the stat sheets and the numbers are a bit deceiving. In my opinion, not any bad game or every bad game, but a lot of the bad games have been out of the control of the goaltenders. They're doing everything they can in what's been a difficult season defensively. So I'm really excited to see what they can do as the Bruins hopefully play better defensively in the second half.
Yeah. All right, to quickly wrap up here, we just went through all the players that have played 10 plus games and gave them their grades to this point so far in the season. To quickly wrap things up, Danny, I just give me something that kind of stood out to you as a positive so far this year for the Bruins, something that is a good sign moving forward.
The top three haven't slowed down, and
Mm-hmm.
as easy as that may be, oh, he's got a cop out answer and whatever. It's true with the how they're getting older, and the Bruins need them to produce, and they still are. I always wonder when they're gonna run out of gas in the tank, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like they haven't really run out of gas yet. There have
Yep.
been some bumps in the road, and you know, for those three, but they still have been able to be key point producers for the Bruins. So
Yeah, for me, I think it's the goaltending. I mean, they're getting high level goaltending from Swayman and Ullmark, and now, it looks like Tuukka Rask is going to be coming back into the fold as he returns from injury, and you're going to have three legitimate goaltenders there if you're the Bruins, and especially, in a year like this where, COVID is still having such an impact. Having depth and having three goalies as opposed to only two is a huge boost, and just I think like the goaltending's been being really good, and you think about playoff hockey and how important goaltending is come playoff time and can literally win or lose you a series. um I think that's a positive for this team is that, whether it's Swayman, whether it's Ullmark, whether it's Rask coming back, I'm always going to expect a really solid goaltending performance. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10 with these goalies, you're going to get that really solid goaltending performance. So I think, that's one area that the Bruins are in really good shape is in goal. And, I hope that these guys can keep playing at this level the rest of the season because they're gonna win some more games if they keep getting goaltending like they've gotten.
not only that, but you look at, as these games pile up and cancellations and maybe back-to-backs,
Yep.
having three goalies in the net gives you an opportunity for rest. It gives Bruce
Absolutely.
Cassidy an opportunity where he can put a goaltender in net and say, I can trust this goalie to perform and, give us a shot to win. And that's going to be extremely important as the season wears on and, keeps the guys fresh for playoff time, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is going to be extremely important with some of the condensed schedules that we may end up seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. So now to switch it over quickly to the other side, if you had to pick one area that needs a big improvement, significant improvement for the Bruins to be the team that we all want them to be this year, as over the course of the rest of the year, what do you think really needs to get better for this Bruins team?
Secondary scoring. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you look at it, all ties back to what I thought was good, the big three, but it's the big three and not a whole lot of other people. Like we said earlier in the show, we want to see Taylor Hall,
Yep.
Charlie Coyle, those guys step up because, you can only rely on 3 players for so long.
Yep.
And we even talked about this over the summer. When you look at the playoff teams, they're all built with secondary scoring, and they all have players that can score on every line.
Yep.
The Bruins haven't had that depth in quite a while, and we were hoping, I remember when we talked on the show over the summer, that these acquisitions and, Taylor Hall and his extension, that would provide the Bruins secondary scoring. So far, it's the same story, but a different day.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Secondary scoring is the biggest problem with this team. They've had some defensive lapses, but overall their defense has been fine. Their goals against per game is actually pretty good this season. It's not really keeping the puck out of their own net that's the problem. It's the fact that they don't have nearly enough offense, and they're not getting the production that they need to from their second, third, and fourth lines offensively, and you're not going anywhere in the playoffs if you're a one-line team. You're going to be out in the first round, second if you're lucky, but you're not going to go deep if you don't have more than one line of scoring, and right now that's the biggest issue for the Boston Bruins. And I don't think it's about going out and making a move and trying to bring in a new player, because they did that last year. They brought in Hall, they brought in Riley on the back, and they made the changes last year. They also made the free agent signings with Howla and Foligno. They need the guys on this roster to pick it up. The guys that they brought in to be secondary scorers need to be secondary scorers. And it's just about those guys, doing what they're paid to do and getting their game together that are in that locker room. And so far, we haven't seen it, and they need to get that going in the second half if they're going to make any sort of run this year.
Hall and Foligno are my 2 guys that really need to step it up in this second half of the season. I mean, at least Coyle's producing, but Hall and Foligno, for what we thought they were going to bring to this team, they need to step up in a much, much, much bigger way.
Agree with you on that 100%. But there you have it. That is going to bring us now to the end of episode 48. Danny, it was awesome to have you on again, as always, dude. It's always awesome talking hockey with you.
Absolutely. This was a great time. I feel like we covered quite a bit today, but I'm very glad that I was able to do so, and thank you for having me on, John, and I look forward to being on again soon.
Yeah, definitely, dude, for sure. Love to have you on again. Thank you all to everybody watching. Hope that you all are having a great holiday season. Hope you all have a very happy new year as we are turning the calendars into 2022, and it's coming quick. So by the time that I'm doing another episode, it will be 2022. That's pretty wild to think about. But thank you guys. Yeah. Thank you guys all again for watching. Want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them. Don't forget about the links down in the description of the video to get your Boston Bruins apparel, your apparel from any NHL team, or your NCAA college apparel as well. Whatever you want to rep, they have it there. Just check out those links in the description. It would really help out a lot. Really, really appreciate you all watching and listening. Hopefully you enjoyed episode 48. I'll be back next week with episode 49. And hopefully we'll actually have some Bruins games to talk about by the time we do an episode next week. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys again. Have a great New Year's, and talk to you all soon.